And we're
And welcome
live.
into Gator Bytes. Welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network. Also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by our friends at Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for any orthopedic injury or concern. We invite you to check out their website, se-ortho.com. He is Dylan Denmark. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. You presumably are Florida Gator fans and hope you have recovered from what was, well, an awful weekend. Last weekend at the Swamp, Florida loses to USF 18-16. Their reward for that is a trip to Death Valley in Baton Rouge tomorrow night, prime time against the LSU Tigers. Denmark, I know we've talked a lot about Florida USF this week. We've talked a lot about Billy Napier, and we will continue to do that here on Gator Bites. Your thoughts about the loss last week and everything that transpired, particularly late there in the fourth quarter.
Uh, After the Long Island game, it was kind of, you can't take too much from that game. Offensively, DJ Lagway didn't look right. The offense was good with the run game. Going to the USF game, you kind of expect DJ Lagway to correct some of those mistakes. And, if worse came to worse, you expect them to lead on that run game. And in the second half, you got out-physicaled by a team that you don't even recruit, which is really pathetic to put it bluntly. A lot of Gator fans are expecting, after a poor performance after last week, that tomorrow, this is Napier's kind of game where everybody rides them off like last year, and you go into the Bayou and you do something. Well, I don't know how many people expect Lagway to be fully healthy and to correct a lot of mistakes that he's had from the previous 2 weeks. That's the biggest thing for tomorrow. I don't really know how many people have a lot of faith in to Florida going into tomorrow and winning the game. It's a 7-point spread. It opened up at 9.5 earlier in the week, and it's bad times right now in Florida. I mean, Billy Napier is 20-20 at his tenure at Florida, and that's the worst 4-year stretch for our coach since the late 40s, if I'm not mistaken. It's bad right now.
We'll get to Napier in a moment. I want to talk about your thought on Lagway. You'll remember this, and I was so angry last Saturday that I went back and pulled up the video and put it out on my social media. So I think it was like late June, early July. It was like a week or two before media days. I made the comment on the air on Hacker After Dark, Lagway, 12 touchdowns, 9 picks. The more concerning thing to me was the 60% completion percentage last year, and I just didn't know why Gator fans were putting him in New York as a Heisman finalist heading into the year. He's got all the potential in the world, great athlete, but he wasn't at times very good last year. And look, opinions are great. I tend to focus more on numbers, and maybe that's a flaw of mine, but at the end of the day, every 10 passes he threw, he completed 6 of them last season. That's factual, and that's not very good. And this year, people can say, well, he's missed practice. And yeah, I guess he has. As far as I know, he's been practicing the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and he was bad at times last week against USF. He wasn't average, certainly wasn't good. He was bad. And he looks like he's kind of laboring out there. Whenever he runs, it looks kind of quirky and weird. I mean, I don't know about DJ Lagway. That was a real head scratcher last week for me.
Yeah, Lagway is not healthy. I mean, that's pretty clear. We expected him to at least be athletic and be able to move around. He hasn't shown any ability in the first 2 weeks that he is a threat with his legs that we've seen from a year ago. And I know he didn't have to use his legs after he got hurt with his hamstring injury in the Georgia game. But yeah, he's not right. He has no timing. He has no rhythm. And the biggest thing is he's not confident. If you don't have a confident quarterback, good luck to you. I mean, it's you're not going to be able to do anything in the SEC playing good opponent after good opponent if you don't have a good quarterback week to week in this league.
And now to Billy Napier. When they were losing games, at least the one thing you could say about Billy is he wasn't running an insane asylum. People were disciplined. They might be making stupid false start penalties, but they weren't, for the most part, getting the ridiculous late hit out of bounds, things like that. I mean, they were a disciplined football team in that regard. That went completely out the window last Saturday when Bet, the defensive tackle, spit in the face of his opponent. 15-yard penalty is one thing. I told you on Monday on Hacker After Dark that kid would never play for me again at the University of Florida. That is not what the Gators are about. That is ludicrous. I would have either yanked his scholarship. I don't know how the NIL is affected or because he's a transfer, but whatever needed to happen, if it were me, that kid would never play for me again. And then we come out Monday and Billy's like, oh, he's just so remorseful and he feels bad and we're going to handle it internally. That's bullcrap. All right. That is not what Florida football is about. That is not the standard. You stood there. Not only did you cost your team, but you embarrassed yourself and the program by spitting in another man's face. I cannot believe that kid is still a part of the Gator football team.
Yeah, I think that's a little egregious. I understand how you feel that way just because everything builds up and then that's like the cherry on top at the end of the game. We all forget when the Lions 2 years ago who spit on an FSU player. An FSU player when the game after Jordan Travis got hurt, and that was a 15-yard penalty. I think it was a big point of the game. I mean, the whole thing with Napier, it's like last week, nothing surprised us. That's the biggest thing. I mean, it was Lagway not being consistent, not being the guy we thought he was, doesn't look healthy, and everything with Napier, with the play calling, with time management, the poor special teams, and with player discipline like this, where you have another player who spits in someone else, and it's not that he does it; it's also on top of when he does it, late in the fourth quarter, the final drive, and it puts USF in position to win the game. That's the biggest thing for me, and it's just like anytime. Like right now, there was so much buildup into the season. Florida could be a playoff team, yada yada yada. And now, like all of the oxygen is gone. Like all the oxygen is gone out of the fan base.
Well, and I'm guilty of this. I'm not going to throw stones in a glass house. I've done a lot of soul searching since the loss to USF. I'm guilty of this. All right, the 4-game winning streak last year might have been fool's gold. You played Tulane, who didn't have their quarterback, and a lot of other guys who bailed before the bowl game. You beat the worst Florida State team that they've probably had in 50 years, right? Was it Ole Miss that dropped like 6 passes, 3 of which would have been touchdowns? And the LSU game, I can't explain that. I don't know how Florida beat LSU last year. That's a good win. Maybe that's the best win of the 4. But that 4-game winning streak got everybody fired up, right? Got everybody pumped coming into the year. And you play a middle school team in week 1, a paycheck game, you destroy them. And like you said, that USF team was more physical. That USF team executed better. They were smarter. They were better coached. And that's a group of 5 team in your own state. And if they're that much better than you, what on earth is LSU, Miami, Texas, and Texas A&M going to do to you in the next 4 contests?
Yeah, going back to last year, Matt Hayes wrote a piece on USA Today. He kind of put it, I think, pretty good. The reason Napier kept his job last year is going to be the same reason he gets fired probably at the end of this year. And it's because of DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway was playing as one of the best quarterbacks in the month of November. It's one of the main reasons why you beat LSU. Remember that game was tied at the end of the third quarter going into the fourth quarter, and Florida ended up winning 27-16, I believe. The Ole Miss game, he made some insane, ridiculous throws. And yes, Ole Miss did drop a couple balls, and Ole Miss did have a couple of things where on 4th and 1, they're using a defensive line as a direct snap to get a first down. You're like, okay.
And everybody in the stadium knew they were going to do that. Everybody, and they still did it.
So Lagway was insanely hot in the month of November, and he's not that right now. I mean, we talked all offseason about the roster and the receivers and the running back game, and and the O-line, and this is the best roster Billy's ever had. I mean, he said that in the offseason, and it's all true. And I said, multiple times, this team goes with Lagway. And if Lagway's not good, this team doesn't go anywhere. I don't care how good the roster is.
He is Dylan Denmark. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. This is the Gator Bytes podcast, 1010XL Florida Gator Facebook page, and also the 1010XL social media channels. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They are the best orthopedic center in the area, se-ortho.com. And if you want to hear the good Dr. Kevin Murphy, you can check him out Thursday mornings on The Drill with Jeff and Dan for his analysis of injuries in the world of sports. And again, thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. We'll get to LSU in just a moment. Again, final, bow on last week. The outrage, sometimes I think Gator fans, the term realistic and Gator fans is not really in the same sentence very often. But certainly it was realistic to think you would beat USF at home. And the one thing I'll say about Billy Napier, the fan base has always been very critical of him. The former players that we have on and the former players that you see on social media, for the most part, defended Billy up until last week. They liked the direction of the program. They thought Billy was doing a good job off the field with recruiting, all that sort of thing. Now you're starting to see former players come out and say, wait a minute, that was inexcusable. And when you already lose the fan base for the most part and you start losing the big money alumni like the former players, then at that point it's only a matter of time, correct?
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, for a former player, it's embarrassing. I mean, it's like I said to start the show. You lost to a team, to kids that you don't recruit. You recruit the kids that go to Florida State and Miami. You don't recruit the kids that go to USF, UCF, Florida Atlantic, Florida International. And when that happens, that's a head scratcher. I mean, forget the expectations that everyone had going into the season. When you lose a game like that, and the first half kind of expected it to go that way a little bit. I mean, the refs, made a couple of calls that I didn't agree with, like everybody else.
Yeah, the Hayden Hansen offensive pass interference was an atrocious call. And maybe that's the difference in the game, but the game shouldn't have even been that close to begin with. But the Hayden Hansen OPI was crazy.
Well, that and the holding call right before that. The running back clears the lineman, and then his hand gets outside the shoulder. It's like, okay, ticky-tack, but whatever. But regardless, I expected it to be a 17-10, kind of first half. And I think it was 9-3 at the half. But in the second half, you should come out and you should dominate them. And it's like I said, we all thought that if this offense wasn't rolling, that you were going to rely on the offensive line. That's probably going to have two guys in Slaughter and Austin Barber to be drafted highly next year, and then use one of the best running backs in the country probably, and just do that, and you'll be good. Instead, you come out in the second half, and you go 3 and out in your first drive. And instead, the only offensive touchdown you have in the game is when Vernell Brown has an insane punt return, and you had a 15-yard penalty on top of it, and you scored a touchdown. I mean, if that doesn't happen, and instead he gets a 5-yard, 10-yard return, and they start the drive at their own 35, I don't know how many Gator fans expect them to score a touchdown in that game if it's not for that. That's the biggest thing. Billy Napier, I thought, called a good game in the first half. He called touchdowns. They just, Livingston dropped a pass, and those 2 penalties get called back. But the second half is where coaching comes into play. First half, you go on script. Second half is, okay, it's on you. You have to see what they're doing. You have to get a vibe of what your team is doing, and then you go. And it was almost like they were outmatched against South Florida.
Yeah, well, it was ugly, and when Grammatica misses the 58-yarder, you got to kill 2 minutes and 40 seconds. You get 1 first down, 2 first downs for sure, but probably 1, and the game is over, and you took 7 seconds off the clock.
Well, and you had a delay of game. You had a delay of game right when you go on the field because you didn't have enough time to call a play. Like, that's bad, man. And the special teams under Billy Napier, the offense has been bad. The defense has been atrocious at times. The special teams is right there with it, man.
Oh, I mean, we all remember Yeah, the snap over the head.
Well, the snap over the head. You had to delay a game on a punt. You had there was something else I was about to say. We all remember the Tennessee game, 12 men on the field that took points away. Oh, when Billy took a timeout, that got cost Florida not having 3 timeouts at the end of the game instead of having they had 2.
But he wouldn't have called him anyway. He wouldn't have called him until 20 seconds anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
By the way, real quick, he said something in his post game that, quite frankly, I was shocked by. He said, well, we only had 2 timeouts, so the clock was going to be what it was regardless. That's not true. If your defense, if you stop them on first down, you call a quick timeout, maybe the defense gets a little muster about them, maybe gets a little, backbone to them. You stop them again, you call a timeout. Then you get the ball back with 25 seconds to go. Is it likely you win the game? Probably not, but at least you get the ball back. When you let all that time run off the clock, demoralizes the defense. They're aware of what's going on. South Florida's runs right through them and runs out the clock to kick the field goal. I was stunned that they didn't call those timeouts when they could have after first down.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it's just like it doesn't even matter, man. It's like they probably still. I agree, but it's just like at the end of the day, it's like what really doesn't matter. I was gonna say with the special teams, we remember the Tennessee game last year. The Florida they've had a couple delayed games on punt last year, but we don't remember because it was early in the LSU game. They happened in the Tulane game. Point being, there's been so many special teams miscues. The Georgia field goal last year, Florida's in the game and the ball goes over the holder's head. There's just so many times where, it's just the little things that just continue to hurt the team over and over again. It's just another layer of just this team under Billy Napier.
And of course, the all-timer was Salt Lake City, where you have 2 guys wearing the number 3 or whatever on the field.
God, I forgot about that.
15-yard penalty, and Utah goes on and scores. That'll never be topped. All right, having said all that, what have we gone here? 17 minutes of destroying the Gators. This game against LSU, to me, I've told you all week, it has Tennessee vibes last year. The morale was so low going into Knoxville last year. And Florida kind of circled the wagons at night in front of 100,000 at Neyland. No one thought they were going to beat Tennessee, and they probably should have beat Tennessee. Now, of course, the play calling in the fourth quarter and some ridiculousness and a Graham Mertz injury cost them that game, which is probably something that's going to be similar tomorrow night. I'll get to in a moment. But they did kind of circle the wagons and should have beat Tennessee in Neyland. I've heard from buddies all week that say LSU is going to kill Florida. They're going to boat race them, woodshed, whatever you want to call it. Denmark, I don't think so, man. I think this is one of those games where, and you give Billy credit for this, when their backs are against the wall, they usually play better when nobody gives them a chance. Now, I don't think they're going to win the game, but I do think, like Tennessee, they might even have a lead in the fourth quarter, but they will find a way to lose the game when all is said and done.
Everybody's having that assumption that Napier's back's against the wall and somehow Florida's going to come out. They don't know how, but they think it's going to be a decent game in the second half. That's been true in the past when Florida's had a healthy quarterback. They do not have a healthy quarterback. If Lagway was healthy, I could side with you. I can't side with you. I do think it's a low scoring game.
Yeah, I don't like LSU's offense. I don't think LSU's offense is particularly good.
And that's the thing. LSU's offense at Clemson scored 3 points at the half, and they did a good job. I think they scored 2 touchdowns in the second half of that game. And they didn't look particularly well against Louisiana Tech a week ago. And their starting center got hurt. He had an ankle injury. Moore is his last name. He's expected to go. What his health is. I'm sure it won't be 100%. And then you put on top of that, Caleb Banks is going to be back for Florida. And you wonder how much he's going to be able to go health-wise because he's probably missed, the last couple of weeks. So you wonder, he's probably not going to play all the snaps. I mean, the interior D linemen usually don't. But that's going to be big. It would not surprise me if it's a game at half, but I don't think there's going to be a point in the second half where I think Florida has a chance of winning, if that makes sense. I think I think it's like a 10-point game. LSU leads, and I don't think the game's really ever in doubt.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do think that like I'm never going to think Florida's going to win tomorrow night because they're not going to win tomorrow night. But again, it would not surprise me if Florida has the lead in the fourth quarter. And as I told you earlier this week, man, mark my words, an intentional grounding, too many guys on the field, a ridiculous delay of game, a turnover, something's going to happen midway through the fourth quarter tomorrow night that will turn the tide and LSU will win the game by a touchdown. I can see Florida driving to maybe put the game out of reach. They make a big play and they'll have 12 men on the field because it's what they do, or they'll have an intentional grounding because it's what they do, and it'll completely turn the tide of the game. I like LSU by a touchdown when all is said and done.
I'll take LSU 27-17. I think that's
similar outcomes. You have 10, I have 7. Quickly, because I want to end with Florida and LSU, a final thought. Boy, it's a good weekend in the SEC. Let's go rapid fire here. Arkansas, Ole Miss, a battle of 2-0 teams.
I probably lean Ole Miss by a little. I think it'll be a low-scoring game, but I think Ole Miss will probably lean slightly in that game.
I like Ole Miss too. Vandy goes to South Carolina. A couple of 2-0 teams here. Man, I'm telling you, everybody, if Billy Napier, when Billy Napier is relieved of his duties, everybody's going to be on the Marcus Freeman, Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin train, and I am too. My first 2 calls will be to Marcus Freeman and Dan Lanning. They're going to both tell you no, but I call them anyway. I know Frangie brought up the John Gruden thing on his show, which is certainly an interesting possibility. It wouldn't be the sexiest thing, and I don't think Florida would do it, but I like Clark Lee. I like Clark Lee a lot at Vanderbilt. He went into Blacksburg with that team and beat Virginia Tech by 24. I'm not so sure Vandy doesn't go into Columbia tomorrow night and beat South Carolina.
Yeah, the thing with South Carolina, though, they have an incredible quarterback, and usually those are the difference in these kind of games.
Vandy doesn't have a slouch at quarterback.
No, they don't, but he's not LaDor Sellers. And I think most people would agree with that. Sellers, it's not what he can do in the passing game so much. A lot of it has to do with his running game, too. And that's a lot for any defense to do, to contain with. I like South Carolina this game. I do think it's going to be one of the better games of the weekend, but I think South Carolina wins this one.
Big game for Texas A&M. We don't know much about Texas A&M. We'll find out a lot more tomorrow. I believe that game is in South Bend against the Irish. Who do you like between Notre Dame and the Aggies?
I like Notre Dame. Notre Dame, this was the game last year, if I'm not mistaken, where they lost to Northern Illinois, and then they came back and played A&M, and they played really, really well. Notre Dame lost to Miami, almost came away with it at the end. I expected them to run the ball pretty good and then beat A&M.
And they haven't played since Miami. They're going to have 13 days to stew on that loss before they see Texas A&M tomorrow. All right, rapid fire, USF Miami on the CW. The best game ever on the CW network, a battle of top 20 teams. South Florida's already beat Boise State. They obviously beat the Gators. They're ranked 18th in America. Can they do it 3 weeks in a row as they take on the Hurricanes?
Yeah, I think reality is going to set in. I think Miami's going to do what Florida should have done a week ago. I thought Florida was going to beat South Florida last week, 38-17. I think Miami does that number. 38-17. Carson Beck, he was so confident against when they played Notre Dame. Malachi Tony, that true freshman who's, I think, 17 years old from American Heritage, is a freak. And I think Miami's going to – it might be close at half, but I think Miami has their way in the second half.
2 more games. Alabama easily over Wisconsin?
I don't know about easily, but I think it's convincing in the second half.
Yeah, I think Alabama wins the game. Big game for Kalen DeBoer. And then probably the best game of the weekend is the one before Florida-LSU. You go to Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, Georgia and Tennessee. I'll give Josh Heupel credit, man. When Nico left 2 months ago, I didn't know what Tennessee was going to do. Aguilar has come in and played well. Tennessee's got a couple of nice wins, including beating Syracuse. A different animal tomorrow with the Dogs coming in, but we really don't know much about Georgia. They've beat Marshall and Austin Peay. It's in Neyland. That place will be bonkers. Who do you like between the Dogs and the Vols?
I'm going to take a Kirby Smart-led team. I don't think he's The last time Tennessee beat Georgia was when Josh Dobbs was at quarterback, and he caught that Hail Mary against Juwan Jennings.
Was that the last time?
That was the
Wow,
last.
that was 2016.
Yeah, that was the year I graduated high school.
Wow. Okay.
That was so. The last 8 games have went to Georgia's way, and they particularly have not been close. I do think this can be a game. To Heupel's comment you made about the quarterbacks, it doesn't really surprise me that Heupel, can take a quarterback and be good. I know Syracuse is no slouch, but I mean we see this almost every year, and it's credit to Heupel. He makes every quarterback look good in the first couple of weeks. The concepts that he runs and them scoring, 40 plus in a lot of those first couple of games, and then they get a conference play, and then they kind of hit a reality. I'm very, very intrigued to see where this kind of game goes, but I would lean Georgia just because of the history that's had in the last couple of years.
Southeast Orthopedic Specialist brings you Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com podcast network. Also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page for the highest quality care. You can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for any orthopedic injury or concern. And we invite you to check out their website, se-ortho.com. And as always, thank you to the good folks of Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for their continued support of the Gator Bytes podcast. All right, Denmark, final thoughts, Florida-LSU. We both think LSU wins the game. You like LSU by 10. I like LSU by a touchdown. I think it is a game in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, if we're both right, Florida's 1-2 going to Miami. And a conversation at that point might be, does Billy need to beat Miami to survive the bye week after Miami?
I think regardless of what happens, I think he stays through the whole year. I mean, one of the reasons he didn't get fired last year, part of it had to do with who was going to be the head coach on the staff. It's easy to say, well, just put some coordinator up. Oh, the coordinator that he couldn't name last year. It's a collaborative effort. Okay. I think they have the same thing with this year. And one thing that fans can't get over, that they can't comprehend and put one and one together. Scott Strickland loves Napier, and because of that, he will coach all 12 games this year. I think that.
Well, let
I'm
me
pretty
push back
certain.
real quick. The only thing I would say to that is they have a bye before Georgia. If they're 1-6 or 2-5, if they're 1-6, I think he's gone the bye week before Georgia. If they lose the next 4 gauntlet games, and I think Mississippi State, I think he's gone before Georgia. 2-5, I think there's a conversation that he's gone. I would be shocked if at 1-6 he coaches against the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, ultimate doomsday. Okay, yeah, a little different, but Napier will win one of these next 4 games, and I think they'll be Mississippi State. They'll have 3 wins, and it's not looking good, and then he'll coach November, and then decision will be made. Yeah, I mean. We haven't seen the song and dance before. I mean, we all wrote him off after the A&M game, and then we all wrote him off, especially after the Tennessee game, the way they lost that. And then you gave him a point to walk on, and he survived. So it wouldn't surprise me if somehow he does it again, just because of the relationship that Scott Strickland has for him. Not saying I agree with it, but that's just how it. I think that relationship is between the AD and the coach.
Florida-LSU, Saturday night, 7:30. Of course, you'll hear the game right here on 1010XL, and then you will get our reaction to it next Friday, the next edition of Gator Bytes. We'll review LSU. We will preview Florida and Miami. We also invite you to join Dylan Denmark and myself tonight on a lot of these same 1010XL social media platforms for the Friday Night Lights postgame. Another big night of high school football all over Northeast Florida. Dylan and I will be with you roughly about 9:30 or so following Bowles and Bishop Kenny, Victoria's head coaches all over the area as week 4 of Friday Night Lights comes at you tonight here on 1010XL and on 92.5 FM. And Denmark, tomorrow night, Florida-LSU, you will be hosting a 1010XL watch party. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a poor tap room in Jacksonville. It's downtown. You get your chance to win a commemorative Florida Gator basketball national championship ball. So I'll be there for the first half of the game. I'll probably get there about 7 and leave at halftime around 8:45, 9 o'clock. So if you want to do belly shots and watch Billy Napier run 2 tight end sets all first half, come holla.
Go join Denmark tomorrow night, Poor Tap Room, downtown Jacksonville, for a Florida-LSU watch party. Denmark, appreciate it. I will see you in about 13 hours under the Friday Night Lights.
Yes, sir. See you then.
Gator Bytes Podcast, 1010XL.com, the Florida Gator, 1010XL Facebook page. And again, thank you to our friends at Southeast Orthopedic Specialists.